Yeah, you read the title of the video and you've seen that I will be talking about a brilliant FNAF fan game. What game is it? Well, it's a little game that doesn't get enough attention called Phobia: The Awakening. Before I get into the game itself, I think I should give a bit of background on it first. So this is obviously one of many FNAF fan games where they take something from our childhoods and make it into a disturbing FNAF fan game, but this game does it with the Australian kids group, the Wiggles. You all absolutely know that I loved the Wiggles as a kid, especially being a young Australian kid, I absolutely loved them. But a lot of people seem to have some trauma to do with one part of the group. There would be segments which were usually in their home video releases, mainly the one from 1998 that would have the puppets of the Wiggles singing their songs but in a high-pitched voice exactly like Alvin and the Chipmunks. I remember these puppets popping up quite a few times, but surprisingly, I wasn't traumatized by them. One of very few kids that weren't traumatized by these things, but looking at them now, honestly I'm surprised that I wasn't scared by them, because they're honestly horrifying. But since the Wiggles were popular worldwide, many kids worldwide shared the same trauma for the puppets. So one developer with the handle IHIHS Games decided to create the FNAF fan game based off the Wiggles puppets. The creator actually has a two-parter on their YouTube channel about the process of them getting to the point where they ended up creating Phobia: The Awakening instead of finishing their first planned game being Brought to Life. By the way, Brought to Life was still a FNAF fan game, but I took a lot of inspiration from Help Wanted, where the game would take place in different locations depending on the nights you're playing. Eventually, after a few years, Phobia: The Awakening was released on 27th of August in 2021, where it managed to garner a bit of attention on release, but seemed to have sizzled out of the FNAF community's eye since then. I surprisingly knew about this FNAF fan game not long after it was released, and I thought that it looked like a good FNAF fan game, but didn't decide to play it until a couple of months ago where I played it and thought it was great. Since I talked about the history of the game, let's get into the actual game itself. So the game has the player play as a new security guard called Mark as they work overnight at a restaurant called Wiggles Pizza House. It's the standard FNAF fan game plot where you watch the animatronics overnight from 12 to 6 AM as the animatronics get more and more aggressive throughout the nights in the game. But you might be asking, who are the animatronics in this game? Well, the main ones you have to face off against are Greg, Anthony, Murray, Jeff, Captain Feathersword, and Jimmy the Elf, with Jimmy being the only original character out of this group. Honestly, when playing this game for the first time, I was so surprised that it was made in Blender. I'm so used to Blender just being a 3D modeling software, and I had no idea you could create games in this software, but apparently you can. The biggest surprise is that this whole game's in an actual 3D environment. I really like the 3D environment, and it really helps with the game as it immerses you in this restaurant, especially when you see things like Murray and Jeff walking down your hallways. Also with the 3D environment, you actually check the time in the night by turning backwards to see a clock that tells you the time, which is so smart as it makes it harder to check the time on more difficult nights. It's honestly just some awesome stuff, especially how you actually see the animatronics walking down the hallways instead of it just being different rendered images to simulate different movement stages. Also, the fact that you have to click on the Greg mask instead of having a little bar to flick up to get the mask on is such a cool detail. I do personally think that they could have added a detail of a hand grabbing the mask when you click on the mask, but hey, it's a little nitpick and I do think that would be an extra cool little detail. Another thing about the atmosphere is I love how the music throughout the night starts to speed up the closer you are to bed in the night, as it really builds a lot of tension and gets you on edge. I briefly mentioned how Murray and Jeff move. I will mention how the rest of the animatronics move, as Murray and Jeff are the two animatronics that are active on night 1. After night 1, you have Anthony attacking you through the vents as you can lock him out. Greg does the same thing but starts on night 3. And lastly, Captain Feathersword will simply just attack you if you don't check camera 6 often enough after night 1. The most interesting mechanic is actually Jimmy the Elf, as they sit in front of you the whole time, but it's a lot like FNAF Pizza Sim where you have to shock Jimmy if they get into a stage where they're close to jump scaring you. I absolutely love how they add this mechanic into the game, and it does become more of a challenge on harder nights where all the animatronics are more active. The gameplay does get really interesting on night 6. After you beat night 5, in this game you get a cutscene where you follow the perspective of Mark as they're in a chair with a light above them. As they are wondering what's going on, Greg comes up to Mark and forces an animatronic head on his. This cutscene's really cool and it's really unexpected. But what's even more cool is that Mark starts to attack you on night 6 as he replaces Murray and Jeff by having the same game mechanics as them. So, since Mark replaces Murray and Jeff, who replaces Greg and Anthony? Well, a different animatronic called the Figure. I'm gonna be honest, on the extras menu when you see the full model of the figure, it looks pretty average, but when you face the figure in-game, it looks awesome. The face on the figure reminds me of Satan from the Adventures of Mark Twain. Whilst I'm on the topic of in-game renders, all the renders for all of the animatronics as they move are honestly quite creepy and very well done. They aren't the most detailed renders, but for what they are imitating, they really work at imitating the puppets and also being creepy. The main renders I really like are all the vent animatronics such as Greg, Anthony, and the figure. I think those are extra creepy. The actual rooms and the cameras are alright, but honestly it looks more like a factory instead of a restaurant. A detail I really love about Night 6 is that the figure and Mark both have different sound effects to the other animatronics. I really like how Mark has normal footsteps when walking down the hallway, and when he gets close to you, he's heavily breathing next to you. It's just little details like that that go so far in this game. But I absolutely dig the gameplay of this FNAF fan game. I feel like it takes everything that has made FNAF good and runs with it as the gameplay goes. I really like how challenging this game can get later on, and when you die in the game, it always seems fair that you died, and it isn't up to RNG a lot of the time, but it's just your mistakes. As the story of this FNAF fan game goes, it's your pretty standard FNAF fan game story. You can find out more about the story by finding tapes each night, either in the cameras or in your main room. In the tapes we find out that the animatronics are acting up because of a system called the Advanced Facial Recognition System, activated, and the system was meant to remain inactive. Because of this system, the animatronics are attacking people, as we see Captain Feathersword mess up one person on the Night 4 tape. And in the Timmy's birthday tape you get from Night 6, you see the figure and 3 kids at Timmy's party, including Timmy. I assume that the first 5 tapes take place in order, but the Timmy's birthday tape takes place before the rest of them. That's because in all of the nights you can actually see missing posters for those characters in your office near the clock. Even though so far in the story of Phobia the Awakening it's quite simple and pretty standard, I think it does help flesh out the characters a bit and explain why the animatronics are after you. I really like this FNAF fan game a lot, and I even like the story of the game as simple as it is. The gameplay is what really shines in this game. It is really fun to play, but it can also be challenging, but also doesn't cheap shot your ass to where you die to bullshit. The only thing I can kinda knock this game back for a little bit is some of the jump scares are weak in this game. Originally the jump scares were much slower, which I'm glad that the creator sped them up as it makes the jump scares more effective, but I find Greg's and the figure's jump scares to be quite weak. They're both still quite slow, especially the figures where he slowly climbs up onto the roof and then slowly jump on you from the roof. Look, I guess it's a personal preference thing, but I really love the atmosphere of this game and how the game's in 3D, and that you can actually see the animatronics moving instead of just still images. In my personal opinion, this is probably one of my most favourite FNAF fan games because I had an absolute blast playing this game. I'm quite excited for the sequel coming out this year, being Phobia Long Hours, where the creator seems to be ramping things up by adding new characters, and hey, this place actually looks like a pizzeria. I really like that the creator's taken the criticisms of the first game to try and make those things better in the second game. I will say that I prefer the design of Greg in Phobia the Awakening compared to the sequel. It's another personal opinion thing, but I think Greg is really creepy in the first game. Also, Captain Feathersword has his Feathersword now, because you can't have Captain Feathersword without his Feathersword. Anyways, I really hope you all enjoyed this video, and honestly, this is a video I've wanted to make for a while, and I felt like I couldn't until my FNAF Iceberg video started to pop off, so thank you all for that. If you enjoyed my video, then you know what to do. Make sure to give it a like, comment your thoughts down below, and consider subscribing, because I would absolutely love to get to 10k subs. That would be ridiculous. Lastly, join my Discord server, the link's in the description, and anyways, let's just get straight into the shoutouts. Massive thanks to the following supporters. Massive thanks to Ash Crimson, Miranda S, Diamond Pony, and Madeline Stringer for supporting my $2 pirate tier. Massive thanks to Elliot, Angie Patterson, and Juliet Wakefield for supporting my $5 pusher tier. Massive thanks to Sam M1994 for supporting my $10 Pee Wee Herman tier. Lastly, a massive shout out to Fatima and Kadora for supporting my Top Chef tier. If you want to find out how you can get your names in my videos, please make sure to click the little join button on YouTube, or otherwise click the little Patreon logo on screen at the moment. Anyways, I'll see you all in the next video.